Hi, so welcome to Golf FM. This is a test principally on the Ping G730 that's just been launched. I'm going to put it up against its little brother, the G430, and also the QI from Taylormade, because I think that's going to be a big seller this year. So these are two other irons that you might consider if you've just heard about the G430 and you're wondering what it's all about. So the G430 is supposed to be Ping's most forgiving iron. It's the biggest head they've got, it's the widest sole. They used to do the 7 series before. It was always their ultimate distance club, ultimate forgiveness club. This has come in looking a little bit more traditional in a way. Just got the basic cavity look. It's not a cap back, it's not covered over, it's not made to look almost as bladey as it can. It's just unashamedly a cavity back iron in the traditional sense. It does look a bit bigger, certainly than the G430. It's got a nice sort of shine to it. It's also got that satin look as well on the base, that satin steel kind of dulled finish that Ping do. It looks really nice. It uses a 17/4 very thin stainless steel on the face to allow it to flex when you hit the ball and give you ultimate trampoline effect and get that ball flying off the face as fast as possible. And then dampening materials in the back as well to try and help give it a softer feel, because it doesn't have a forged face like some clubs do. More in the player's distance iron category, to be honest. You don't tend to see it so much in the ultimate forgiveness category. Generally because it adds quite a lot of cost and it's not always something that somebody in this category is looking for. You almost want a sort of explosive feel off the face, like it's really working for you and giving you a lot of help. Price wise, the G730 is quite expensive. When you consider that you can now get the Ping G430 for about $899, this is going to cost you about $1,200 for 7 irons. So you can get the G430 7 iron set for $999 and this for around about $1,200. So I was trying to work out why that was. I couldn't see anything major in the way it's built that would suggest why it was that much more expensive. So it needs to be good to lure people away from the G430, which is a perfectly good game improvement club, to this at quite a bit more money. And also the QI is cheaper as well by about £200. So, you know, it has to be good. And I think it is in the ballpark of these other clubs, even though it claims to have gone into almost another category again of ultimate forgiveness. Really sensibly, a person looking at QI and looking at G40 would probably be looking at this as well. So let's have a look at the looks between all three of them. So if you put them up together, the immediate thing you notice is that it's the biggest head. It certainly is the biggest head, and that might give you a feeling of confidence if that's what you're looking for. The next biggest is the QI, and when you put the QI up against the G730, there's not a lot of difference. A little bit less tall, it's a little bit of a less wider sole. Yeah, it is. It is a little percentage smaller, the QI, than the G730. You do notice quite a difference between the G730 and the G430. Definitely a wider sole and a bigger blade all round, taller again, longer a bit, but not massively bigger, but it is bigger. And it's up to you, looks, whether you think the G730 looks better than the G430. Personally, I don't really. I think the G430 looks every bit as good. There's not a lot in it, to be honest. And then the QI, well, it's got that cat back design, so it's a bit different, to be honest. And yeah, it looks quite smart. Yeah, so not a lot in the sort of bag appeal to put my 2 pennies worth in. I'd say the QI probably looks the best out of them, but I've said before, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so it's really up to you what you think of the looks of them. So top lines, not as big a deal, top lines in this category. People are looking for a feeling of forgiveness and something that's going to help them. The QI's got the thickest top line out of all of them. The G730 is probably next, and then the G430's got the thinnest top line. The G730 is, when you put it down next to the G430, it's not a massive difference actually. That'd be actually quite hard to tell those apart. Not a huge difference at address, to be honest. Not like there's suddenly miles more offset or anything. I think there is a little bit more offset on the G730, which again, if you don't know what that is, it helps you a little bit if you're slicing the ball, which generally people that go for this club will be doing. So it helps you with that. But other than that, not a lot of difference. So for a lot of extra money, it's going to have to be going some to recommend the G730 over the G430. But yeah, it's funny how the QI is actually the chunkiest of the lot. Right, so let's have a look at the figures now. Before we go any further, the loft on the G730 is 28 degrees. which is the same as the QI, and the G430 is 29 degrees. These are all really strong lofts. I mean, you do actually get stronger than that. You get 27 sometimes, and I think 26.5 on a previous year's Cobra, but it's strong. And you're playing a 7-iron length club, but you're playing a much stronger loft. So I hit the G430 first, the ball speeds there, 121, 121, 121. So no difference there. You'd maybe been hoping the G730 might have come out with a little bit more. I hit 10 shots each. I ended up with 10 shots each. I hit more than that to get to that, but I took 10 acceptably well hit shots. Some leaked a little bit right, some were straight, the odd one left a tiny bit, but it was generally, they were okay shots. They weren't like miles right and fat, you know, they're all reasonable strikes, either a really good strike or an acceptable strike. So I did that with all of them. I was fair with it. So the launch is 18 on the G430, 18 on the QI, and 19 on the G730. Now, I must stress, I'm not a robot, and these figures basically prove that I'm not a robot because it's not kind of really doing what it says it should, but I'll go through them nevertheless. So we've got the highest launch for me on the G730. We've got backspin of 4,700, and then the backspin on the G430 is 4,500. Now, immediately alarm bells should be ringing there because it's 29 degrees, it's higher lofted, the G430, and why suddenly have I got lower backspin? I would put it to you that that's because I'm not a robot, and I probably haven't struck it quite as well, or I've struck it in a certain way to produce a slightly lower spin average on that batch than I did with the G730. So I would almost ignore that. But I suppose what you could say, you look at the Taylormade QI, that's come out very similar to the G730. They're the same loft. That kind of makes sense to me. The G430 figures are possibly a little bit skew with, for want of a better term. The carry on the G430 is 182, QI is 180, and 180 on the G730. So the one that's supposed to go the furthest has not gone the furthest. The G430, which is about 300 quid cheaper than the G730, has gone further in this particular batch of figures. So when you look into this, Ping reckon that the G730 is about 5 yards on average further hitting than the G430. Just as well they're not going by my figures, or they'd be saying it's 300 pounds more and it's 2 yards less carry than its G430. So it was pointless building it. So I would ignore that. And then the descent angle, which is, you know, how steep it's fallen into the green. So they were all okay. You know, they're not anything to shout about. They were acceptable. 45 on the G730, 44 on the Ping, and 45 on the QI. So what I suppose I take from that is that the G430 is performing really well against slightly stronger lofted clubs. So they're both 28, the QI and the G730. And well, on my silly figures, the G430 is beating them. So I wouldn't read too much into these figures. What I think you'll find with the G730 is if you put it in the hands of a robot, it's going to be slightly more forgiving. It's going to go further than the G430. But if you're remotely bothered about price, then you need to think hard about whether you need to spend that extra money for a small gain or a gain that you might not even probably notice. I'm going to hit them now and talk about feel and talk about looks again and give you my final thoughts after that. Right, so I'm going to hit them back to back, just giving you my thoughts on feel and looks again a little bit. So when I put this down, it looks really quite nice for a game improvement club. It really is a nice looking club. It's not a clumsy top line. It's thick enough without being too chunky. I think it will still give people a lot of confidence, and it doesn't look overly big. I mean, it's a big club head, but it doesn't look bad in any way. And it's a nice finish, a nice satin sort of finish to the top and the sides of the blade. That was a decent strike, a little bit right, and there's that 180 carry, 194, 4,800 spin, so it's nothing too amazing in that department. 18 degrees launch and descent angle 45, so it's kind of doing what it was doing. I got the odd one carry a little bit further than that, maybe like 184 and then 200 total distance, but that is kind of the average sort of shot for it. Hit another one and move on to the others. Decent strike again. A little bit straighter, and that's 179 again, 193 total, 18 launch, 5,036 spin this time, and 45 degree descent angle, so it's supposedly going to stop not too bad. Considering how far it's going, you've got to remember it's carrying 180. So yeah, I mean, it feels, they all to me feel quite similar. I'm just going to hit the G430 now. Now when I put this down, it looks thinner, definitely looks thinner. So if you're going for a little bit, you want a more chunkier look to give you confidence, then the G730 might be the club. Yeah, that felt nice. A little bit out to the right again. 176 carry, 4,700 spin, 18 launch, 44-degree descent angle. Nothing spectacular, but I left the blade open a little bit and lost maybe a little bit of distance there. Not a perfect strike. A little bit low and left. That'll be a low spin one. 180 carry, 4,300, yeah, 15 launch. Didn't quite hit that one properly. Not a lot of difference in the feel, pretty similar. That was a really nice strike. Tiny bit right, but well hit. And it feels solid. Nothing wrong with the feel of these clubs. Absolutely nothing wrong. They don't feel hard and harsh. None of them. So that was, what, 17-degree launch, 4,900 spin, 182 carry, descent angle 44. So it felt solid. I wouldn't say it felt any better than the G730, or the G730 felt better than it. It felt quite similar. Onto QI, and looks wise, it looks fine. It does look a big blade. It's, for me, almost the same kind of feel about it as the G730. In fact, when you put it again, yes, the top line is thinner on the G730 than the QI. The QI's got the thickest top line out of any of the main irons I've seen so far this year. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not something I like, but it might be something that you like. So that might be a plus point. But yeah, I mean, it looks like it wants to help you is one way you could look at it. But it doesn't look bad, and it doesn't look like there's a hell of a lot of offset on it either, which I don't mind too much. I would prefer it to be like that. So probably 7 out of 10 strike, and the club felt perfectly good. 179, 16, really low spin. Do you get some really low spin ones like that? That was 3,800, which is just a bit, obviously just scooped it a bit without realising it. So it's, I'll hit another one, see if we can get a better strike than that. Well, I think it was alright. It could be a low spinny one again. 178, yeah, 4,100. I've been finding this QI in this batch to be the lowest spinning out of the lot, but I haven't found it excessively bad at other times, so it's maybe just the batch. That was a better strike. Gone a bit left though. 178. 4,200 spin. Yeah, I mean, it feels quite nice. It's got a lot of material in there inside the head trying to make it feel softer, but I'll just hit one and then hit the G730 back to back. I think you can feel the club trying to help you in terms of like the soft feel in the head there. It's, I can describe it as soft, but it's not in any way harsh. It's perfectly good. So this is G730 straight after QI. Well, I almost preferred that sound and feel. I don't know whether I hit them exactly the same, but that felt really solid and still not harsh in any way. Go back to QI. Yeah, I mean, I know I hit that right, but that felt equally as good as the G730. So no, it isn't. I'm looking for things that aren't there. So we'll go to G430 now for feel. That felt good as well. When you hit them out the middle, there isn't enough to bother about in terms of feel. They all feel good. So conclusion time. G730 looks pretty nice, feels nice, strong club. I'm sure it's pretty forgiving as well. I find that difficult to tell a lot of the time in these tests. I think it's operator error is the main culprit from hitting it offline. It's quite expensive, and especially when you put it up against the G430, which in my test, which you have to slightly discount the figures because they're a little bit nonsensical in the 29-degree club's going further than the 28-degree club. Even if this is 5 yards further, which is what Ping Robot supposedly came out with, you have to be pretty certain that you like the looks and the feel of the G730 over the G430 to justify it, because £300 more roughly is quite a lot to ask for what I can see as only a very, very small amount of performance that there must be. And actually in this test, I didn't see it. So if you're asking me which one you should go for, I would say the G430, followed by the QI, followed by the G730. Sorry to say that, Ping, but I suppose I'm still recommending one of your clubs. Fields are all pretty much the same, and it's just a case of what you like the look of the best. If you really want something that looks really comforting and friendly, then I suppose it's the QI, because it's got the thickest top line and probably equally as big a looking head at address as the G730. G430 though, brilliant all-rounder. Always has been, always will be. Yeah, sorry it's a little bit inconclusive in the figures, but that's what you get when you put a human in charge of it. And all good clubs, has to be said, none of them would be a bad purchase in any way, shape or form. If you've got any questions about them, put them in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.